Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar today. I'm Dara Jegede, Communications Manager at MIDiA Research. We are a market intelligence and consulting firm and the definitive source for cross-entertainment business analysis. So today we are going to be joined by Eve Online, and together with media experts, they will explore how games companies can unlock growth through cross-entertainment partnerships and in-game spending, and also how they can protect engagement in a saturated attention economy. If you have any questions about today's topic, do use the Q&A window at the bottom of the screen. So you find it at the bottom of your screen. And we'll address those towards the end of the program. And of course, the presentation from today will be available on our website as well. So please look out for a follow-up email from myself on how to get access to that. And while we wait for more people to join, I'd like to quickly tell you about the new season of the MIDiA podcast. It's just gone live today. So our music, games and cultural insights analysts talk about the attention recession, what it is, what to expect, and what comes next for the new era of entertainment beyond the traditional dynamics of consumption. So it's available on all those platforms there, as you can see. And without further ado, let's get started with today's program. Over to you, Carol.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone everywhere. Today, I would like to take you through a crucial opportunity for games companies. And the opportunity really revolves around doubling down on fandom and cross-entertainment in games. The opportunity stems from changing market dynamics, which we will discuss first, leading on to the role that fandom and positive sentiment play in this opportunity. And finally, I'll take you through three key trends we believe are going to drive growth for games over the next half a decade or so. And of course, after that, as Dara mentioned, we will follow up with a panel and get a little bit deeper into the concept of fandom and cross-entertainment. So we've got quite a bit to get through, so let's just jump right in. The global games revenue will still grow over the next half a decade, but the big change that's going to happen, however, is that the rate of growth is going to start slowing down. And this is due to a number of reasons, which we don't have the time to quite discuss today. They would probably warrant sort of a half an hour keynote on their own, but really sort of the top level is the saturated attention economy, obviously the effects of the COVID bounce, maturing gamer penetration, and also the rise of subscription services, etc., that are ultimately going to be sort of diluting a part of the individually packaged games propositions. But what we are here to really discuss today is, if the growth rate is going to start slowing, despite there still being around a $40 billion upside over the next half a decade or so, where will the growth rate actually continue in games, and where will that growth actually be? Now, our forecast further states that in-game spending, it will capture an increasing share of the total games revenue. This is where much of the growth will be for the games industry over the next half a decade. And we'll see that it already accounts for about 70% of games revenue when we exclude hardware and subscriptions outside of games. But in-game spending as such is a very wide term that actually includes different types of spending and certainly supports very different business models and philosophies. So I want to kind of spend a little bit more time on the part that I would like to zoom into. And I'm talking about the distinction between progress-related and what we call cosmetic in-game spending. Now, both are types of in-game spending, but have different implications on the business models, as well as their impact on gamers and how they are perceived as a result. So most importantly, one of these is the future, the other is not. And I'm talking about cosmetic being the future. Progress-related has been a very straightforward way, really, to drive revenue, particularly for free-to-play mobile games, etc. But it actually carries a number of negative externalities, as we are probably all well aware. The fact that it creates inequality among players and that they view progress-relating in-game spending as imposed, it's kind of well known. Cosmetic in-game spending, on the other hand, is aspirational because it doesn't put one at a disadvantage within the actual game. Seeing someone wearing a cool hat or a t-shirt makes them go, oh, wow, I'd like that, rather than, oh God, what's the point of even playing against, a spender that spent money on a gun that I'll never be able to get to. But of course, money rules often. So up until now, the case for deprioritizing progress-related in-game spending was really tough to make. But in 2020, cosmetic in-game spending actually reached this magical mark of 50% of all in-game spending, which was up from 48% in 2019. And this means that the scale of importance has now actually tipped in favor of cosmetic in-game spending. And we believe that the trend will continue for a few years at least. And focus on cosmetic in-game spending has been long justified from the consumer experience point of view. But now there is actually a growing commercial reason to support that too. And it's not just about what will sort of bring the money and the growth over the next couple of years. It is also about the total size of the opportunity. So progress-related in-game spending is fundamentally geared to sell games-centric products. Cosmetic in-game spending, however, unlocks the opportunity to monetize and build fandom beyond just games or gamer-centric needs, which can significantly increase the size of the pond in which games companies are currently fishing in. And this is kind of the crux of the opportunity that we are discussing today. As we know, gamers are so much more than just gamers. In fact, they over-index in terms of both money spent across entertainment formats, but also they over-index on time spent across entertainment formats. And this brings me to a really important point. No matter how good a game is, users are still always going to be spending time and money on other entertainment formats and experiences, particularly those that help them build and define identity and image in the digital environment. So games companies now have a unique opportunity to start working towards creating new experiences and capturing some of that time and money spent on non-gaming entertainment into their own ecosystems. But to achieve that, it is crucial to double down on building positive sentiment and fandom, alongside simply, just chasing engagement and short-term revenues. And various games companies, I guess, will be at various stages of doing this. But I believe there are two key reasons for all games companies to start moving in this direction, where fandom and positive sentiment are actually put to the forefront along with KPIs such as engagement and revenue. Now, there are sort of two really big points and reasons to why fandom is so important to be embraced right now. One is to protect your engagement in the saturated attention economy. And those of you who may have listened in yesterday to Tim's video part, Tim's already touched on this a little bit, but in 2019, the attention economy peaked. There was more and more content available, while 24 hours in the day remained constant. And once we've hit the limit, there is no more available time to allocate to new propositions, which means consumers are now much more likely to engage in prioritization between apps and services and content. And as and when that inevitable decision-making comes, it is actually fandom or the degree of positive sentiment which the brand has built with the user thus far, which is likely to actually be the deciding factor. And you can build positive sentiment within a game only, of course, but those that will end up winning here will be games companies who embrace the gamers, that gamers are fans of so much more than just games. To really boost positive sentiment, you've got to embrace the fact that gamers have sentimental and emotional needs beyond games and cater to those too. So the second point I wanted to make here is really about timing. All the non-gaming sectors have traditionally had their issues with monetizing fandom in the digital environments. But with the outbreak of COVID, those issues suddenly changed from, status from important to urgent, because the key fandom building and fandom monetization channels have stopped for a lot of these sectors. Now, there is this unique window of opportunity where non-gaming partners are seeking to explore all the avenues they can in order to actually build and monetize fandom in the digital environment. And games can absolutely be a solution here. However, these companies, the non-entertainment partners, are likely to seek games partners which already have some sort of infrastructure or the ethos of monetizing fandom, because really that's the problem they are trying to solve. And so again, this is one of the reasons why, if you aren't yet on the journey of sort of really integrating fandom into your KPIs and sort of day-to-days, this is another reason to do that. Now, second point on the timing is that there is a deadline to this opportunity. As soon as lockdowns lift and we get we gradually get out of the sort of pandemic setup, non-gaming companies are going to shift a part of their focus back to reviving their existing fandom opportunities. And the trend will, of course, still continue with wanting to operate and build fandom in digital. But part of that focus will shift away. So right now, games companies are arguably in the best negotiating position they can be with non-gaming partners. And with all this in mind, I'm going to take you through 3 trends, which are going to be key for driving positive sentiment, cross-entertainment opportunities, and ultimately revenue growth for the next half a decade. And just keep in mind before we get there, sort of these trends are not just transpiring in gaming, they're actually wider psychologically driven digital consumer trends, which is what makes them so important to build fandom and activate cross-entertainment partnerships effectively. Let's start with the notion of multitasking. Now, consumers are so native to so many digital activities these days, but there is a whole lot of friction still involved, which does not help building positive sentiment. And it is not uncommon today to see someone running a Fortnite session on a console while having FaceTime open on their iPhone, while having a Discord session going on a separate screen, and potentially even having a streamer going on in the background. And users are doing it, but not because it's a great experience, but because their need to socialize and communicate in the digital environment is now so strong that they are doing it despite how clunky the setup is. I think part of the reason that games companies haven't quite made this much easier on gamers yet is because multitasking can often be thought of as, dangerous, something that you may want to discourage, something you may want to ignore or even fight against. But remember, no matter how good the game is, it is not going to stop users wanting to check their social media feeds or their latest scores of their favorite football team or socializing with friends. And so, as the saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them. Your users are already doing it. There is an opportunity for games companies to actually start catering to these needs and help them do it more comfortably while mitigating the risk of dropping out of the session. And this is particularly important at in-game points, which are especially prone to multitasking. So those are, things like loading times and spectator modes, but also about things like sprucing up in-game comms capabilities, for example. And we have a report coming out on this topic very soon, actually. That includes a number of product ideas regarding this, including a really, really big opportunity for next generation spectator modes, as we call them. So keep an eye out for this one, on this one for sure. But the point is, obviously, every game is going to be different. But what every game can do is identify the points of that particular game where users are most likely to multitask and enable them to do that better instead of being a wall or an obstacle to it. You will certainly score fandom points, but also you will likely increase engagement and potentially revenue. And this is already happening, by the way. We predicted last year that specifically for this reason, Discord was going to find itself in acquisition talks. So we gave ourselves a nice pat on the back when Microsoft expressed interest, but the real point here is that games companies which don't manage multitasking friction proactively will soon start falling behind in terms of user experience and indeed in terms of positive sentiment too. Now, The second point that I'd like to talk about is about embracing consumers' growing need to express their identity in the digital environment. Now, the principle is quite simple. The longer people spend in the digital environment, the more important their need to express their image in there. And this, again, is very much amplified by the lockdown dynamics. Now, cosmetic in-game spending, excuse me, cosmetic in-game items and experiences are, of course, perfect to enable expression. But two things that I'd like you to keep in mind as you may think about expression in your own titles. One, this is where you can really go wide on cross-entertainment. Gaming, as we all know, is now a cultural phenomenon, but remember that there are other cultural phenomena through which gamers define themselves too. This includes, things like what kind of music they listen to, what sports they may like, what their fashion sense is like, what TV shows do they watch, etc. As a games company, you have the opportunity to host and potentially monetize all of these. And to identify where the exact opportunities are for each individual game, all games companies today should really be conducting what we call an entertainment and culture-wide needs-based assessment of their users. And at MIDiA, we live and breathe this space, so please feel free to reach out to us, whether it be via a question in this chat feature or via email after the presentation. And the final thing about expression, particularly in context of in-game spending, is that the ability to show off our expression to others is a really big part of the value exchange. In an ideal case, you'd actually give consumers options on how or to whom their items are actually displayed, because there are also many different types of fandom. You may want to be vocal about your expression of fandom, but you may also want to be secretive about your expression or fandom, right? This is what people call sort of guilty pleasures, right? Is essentially a type of secretive fandom in a way. But in any case, the ability to show off purchases, well, is important. And taking this a step further, actually, there's an opportunity for games to more proactively enable what we call peer-based feedback features. And I guess the simplest example of one is, likes. This kind of mechanism can perpetuate expression and encourage ongoing expression, but can also supply games companies with really valuable data on how to actually price in-game items and which type of items to actually double down on. Right. So the last part that I would like to take you through over here is the era of lean in. We are now entering what we are calling the era of lean in. And really how we got here is, we've been through what we call lean back, your sort of, era of linear TV, etc. We've been through lean forward, the era of, sort of on-demand subscriptions and all access, etc. And now we're entering what we are calling the era of lean in. This is where creation actually becomes a part of the consumption process itself. And games companies have a couple of opportunities here, right? Sort of as the boundaries, between creators and consumers dissolve, and consumers become more and more used to and native to user-generated content. Again, creator tools as such will look to become a really key part of games infrastructures, products, and features. Being able to, enable not just the sort of creation, but also co-creation, collaboration, and participation via the sort of implementation of creator tools can actually help games establish themselves as a part of sort of like a media platform play, and actually start again improving experiences and excuse me, improving experiences, building that positive sentiment. But also you may be able to actually establish your ecosystems for creators along with reward systems, etc. Right, those are our 3 omni-important trends for games companies to keep in mind when thinking about growth for the next half a decade or so. And I just want to say that the best solutions really will be those that play into multiple of these trends at once. So multitasking and friction management, expression, and lean in. And a couple of examples of some of these that play into multiple trends at once are sort of in the bottom row of this slide, but these will also be described in a lot more detail in our upcoming report, as I mentioned. And as we said, there is an opportunity for games to collaborate with and host non-gaming entertainment formats. So ideally, you want to be thinking about these 3 trends along with the cross-entertainment opportunity. And we're still kind of at the very early stages of this. So games companies have started to design and sell cross-entertainment items and events, but ultimately, they will want to become cross-entertainment products and experiences. And to take that journey successfully, we believe this type of thinking must trickle into product teams and run from ideation stages throughout development. At the moment, cross-entertainment thinking is mostly sitting with commercial, business development roles and partnership roles. But the next step is to bring this type of thinking into games product. But to strike the right balance, companies will need to identify and segment different types of fans and their needs. And we'll touch on that more during our panel in a minute. But before we do, let me just sort of bring this to a conclusion, ladies and gentlemen. Building positive sentiment and fandom is now urgent to sustain engagement over the next half a decade or so. And there are a number of key ways to do that. Keep in mind the cross-entertainment view of your users. Firstly, opening up to other entertainment formats significantly increases engagement and revenue potential for games and helps mitigate the impacts of the saturated attention economy. The cosmetic part of the in-game spending is well suited to unlock the cross-entertainment revenue potential and will be an increasingly important component of in-game spending going forward. Alongside cross-entertainment, the 3 key trends games companies should focus on are multitasking and friction management, the need to express, and the consumers need to lean in. Focusing on these will drive loyalty and ultimately fandom. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That brings this presentation to the end, and I'd like to shift your attention now to our discussion panel. And we've got a really interesting juxtaposition of panelists today, who I'm going to ask now to show their faces and their voices, if they can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Jessica, and
Hello.
hi, Hannah. So
Hello.
let me just stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other. 1 second while I do a little switcheroo here. Perfect. And yeah, so we've got a really interesting panel going on today, because we've got 2 very different but complementary also worldviews here. We've got Jessica Kenyon from EVE Online. She's a community developer at EVE Online, and really, Jessica will introduce what EVE is for those of you who may not be aware, but I'm sure most of you will know what EVE is. It is very, very interesting to have Jessica here, because really her day-to-day job is as close as you can get to building fandom on a day-to-day basis. And fandom is a very big part of EVE, as she'll be able to tell us about. And then, so we've got the sort of tactical day-to-day view on fandom. And then we've got Hannah Callard, MIDiA's cultural trends analyst. who will be bringing in the bigger sort of strategic level picture and actually connecting the dots, as she acts as kind of a glue at MIDiA, making sure that there is always value exchange and ideas exchange going on across our division. So can I get you each to sort of spend 1 minute or so just to take us, give us a little bit more detail on your sort of day-to-day before we dive into the actual panel discussion? Jessica, I'd love to start with you if that's okay.
Sure. I'm Jessica. I work for CCP Games, which is located in Reykjavik, Iceland. And we make the relatively well-known MMO called EVE Online. It is an epic space sandbox game with a single shard living world where we have thousands of players just constantly in there interacting with each other. It is a rather unique beast compared to many other games in just the kind of raw sandbox nature of it. Loss has really deep meaning. Almost everything you have to work for has quite a bit of value. And so you'll actually hear a lot of, when people talk about EVE, they may reference, these massive player battles, which have happened. We actually just had one this past year where over $300,000 worth of ships were destroyed. That, of course, is just an estimate based on the time value of the things that were blown up in the battle, but it's very cool to see just thousands of players getting together for that sort of thing. And anyway, my job at CCP is I am a community developer. So I work with the community on a day-to-day basis. I handle a lot of the communication from the company to the player base and vice versa. So we actually do a lot of information gathering from the players, making sure that that is important. Their voices are being heard within the company through reporting and that sort of thing. And we do event management and anything we can do to try and build our fan base is my area.
Fantastic, thank you. Now I've heard you actually surpassed the former record of that epic battle the other day, haven't you?
Yes. So the big one that a lot of people know was the Bloodbath of BTAC-R, as it was called. If you look it up on Wikipedia, you'll find it under that name. But we just recently surpassed that battle with an even larger, more valuable one, so to speak. And it was quite a sight to see. The fighting went on for 18 hours and involved multiple thousands of players. So it's very cool. That war is still ongoing at this point. Wow. And it has been for over a year now. Yeah.
Wow. Well, 18-hour battle talking about Fandom. Well, we'll get more into that in a second. But Hannah, do you want to give us a little 101 on your day today?
Sure. Yeah. Beats Game of Thrones, man. That's intense. Yeah, so presumably most of you know what MIDiA is all about. If you don't, I mean, you probably know we work in games, music, video, and sports. And so I kind of sit in the middle of the spider web, so to speak, and like see all the big trends and put them together, which is kind of cool. And yeah, so that's why I'm here, because we talk, like in my area, we talk a lot more about like the fandom stuff and the underpinning what consumers are thinking and how they're behaving and why. Yeah, so good.
Great. Thank you. So, and we're going to keep on talking about fandom today. And I guess to start us off, it's, I think, always useful to start with some sort of a definition. And, when you try to define fandom, it kind of becomes very apparent that it's not all that straightforward. So again, Jessica, I'm going to go to you first and just kind of ask you, how do you think about what fandom is at EVE Online?
Okay. So what fandom is? EVE has some incredibly passionate fans. If we're going for a super simple definition, fandom is the group of people who are interested in your product. If you want to kind of take a deeper dive to it, though, you find more layers to what fandom is. So the way that I've always kind of thought about this is, what makes like the strongest fans are every product has a unique set of components that interest different people. So, some people are most attracted to shooters. Some people are more interested in RPGs. EVE Online fans tend to be interested in, participating in that sandbox universe with a lot of real world, like a lot of work that is required and the potential for loss and the big kind of interactive universe where they play a role. So like those are kind of the components that make up a lot of EVE Online fans. And the more components that the users can match with your product, that they kind of resonate with, the more likely they are to, gain a stronger attachment to your product and become bigger fans. So your largest fans in a fan base are generally those who your product just resonates super perfectly with those individuals, and they form the core of your fan base. And then you have the people who maybe aren't quite as attracted to it, and they kind of orbit that fan base in an outer shell. Maybe they interact with your product, maybe they don't. And the stronger that central core is, the more likely you can kind of pull some other people in.
That's really interesting. And even within the core, Jessica, are there sort of fans, or is fandom, even within the core, is it manifested, by different ways and different behaviors? I mean, is there sort of one type of fandom, or are there many different actually types of fans within that core, because something may actually be appealing differently to, something different may appeal to one individual over another? How do you kind of balance that and, go about nurturing and knowing, who to approach how in terms of building fandom?
That's actually a super interesting question. And it's one that we're working really hard on answering in meaningful detail. So for a lot of companies, when it comes to kind of determining why people like your product, because that's relatively important to attracting people and pushing your strengths, or shoring up your weaknesses. When it comes to that, it's almost kind of an educated guess. So these are the reasons we think that our audience likes our product. At CCP, we're taking that a step further, actually. We're doing a fair bit of research at the moment with our user base, where we've actually just published a survey, which is effectively a psychological profile survey. So it's optional, players can fill it out, but we get a pretty neat map of the players' psychological profiles. No individual data, so we can't be like, sorry to hear you're struggling with depression there, Derek, or whatever. But we get a really deep profile map. And so what we're doing with this is we're taking the data in bulk, and we're kind of sorting people into cohorts. So we can actually identify interest groups within our own fan base through the data that we are collecting. And then we can use that to what our end goal is for this. Our primary goal for this is to just improve the retention rates for our new player experience. And so by better knowing what people are interested in, we can better provide the things that will keep them around, and we can actually start sorting those players early and trying to put them into content that is more likely to retain them. EVE being, not as linear as other games. There's a lot of different things that attract people to it. So
fantastic.
I made
so I mean, that's really interesting, because you are actively engaging and trying to actually figure out not just what fandom is, but what are the different fan segments that you need to zoom in on. And I think that's a really, really important point. Hannah, I wanted to come to you for a second and just ask you if you could bring us a little bit, a step back here before we go sort of into more detail, and maybe talk a little bit about a couple of other examples of how companies, which have built strong fandom with their brands, how are they thinking about nurturing fandom? Because obviously, this will be very different sort of company by company.
Sure, yeah. I mean, when you think of fandom, I mean, just to give like a sentence summary, it's not just engagement, it's the driving reason behind why they engage. And it usually involves sentimental factors and a sense of ownership, a way that it's defining not only in terms of a thing that they do or like, but like something that defines them. So you have, like, there's a couple different examples in gaming that did it a bit differently. So obviously you have like Fortnite, which has brought in Travis Scott, which was a huge, huge crowd draw. GTA has its radio, so it has actually cross music fans, which kind of skipping ahead a little bit. And then there's obviously Pokemon Go, which has brought in, a little bit of that nostalgia stuff. And then it's brought in a lot of, when people were able to walk around town and catch Pokemon and share Pokemon and like hang out with people they'd never met before. In Spain, it was a huge deal. There would be like, 100 strong WhatsApp group chats, and you just go out and meet super random people, and everybody loved this. And that was actually a really good example of a company that was able to adapt super quickly to lockdown, because that was one that was very, very risky, right? If you're having people outside, and they just immediately made it digital first. And then my personal favorite, because I'm a bit of an OG fantasy nerd, is Dungeons and Dragons, because they've done a great job of, the brand is really, really strong. So it's in Netflix's Stranger Things, which obviously was a huge hit. That recognition went up. People were able to cross that fandom over. They also have, my brother's a big D&D player, so he and his friends use it as like a sort of social gathering thing. So it's not just the content, it's also they're fans of the activity that they do together. And they've also it's also a history of like fantasy books, which were published in the 80s. I'm a huge fan. I've been rereading them. And audiobooks are the biggest growing audio sector over lockdown, and that's going to continue moving forward. So that's also like a really huge opportunity for all games. If they really want to like start branching out their content into different platforms, they can tap into those fans pretty much everywhere in a lot of different ways. So I think that probably leads you into your next topic of discussion, but I'll let you make the segue.
Well, it depends where we want to go with this. I was actually gonna follow up on this, Hannah, and sort of see whether, since you kind of started talking about cross entertainment and what should companies, and particularly games companies, be thinking about in terms of building fandom with cross entertainment in mind. You sort of mentioned the importance of sort of knowing audiences and their whole entertainment lives, but you've also mentioned this kind of like almost like a dual approach, right? Where one is this kind of games going outward with cross entertainment, like what you mentioned, with sort of D&D, etc. But then you've got also an approach where games can start going inward, right? Essentially absorbing a part of these. So yeah, if you want to talk about this. And
yeah, so there's a really interesting dynamic going on with this, because games had such a big boom over the last year with like pandemic and people spending so much time indoors, and they're moving all their IRL activities into the digital world. A lot of games worlds have a full sort of ecosystem, the way we talk about like Google's ecosystem or Amazon's ecosystem, where you can do all of these different activities. You were talking about that's something that they should all be in your presentation. You said that's something that a lot of these companies should be looking towards. Well, a lot of them are doing it really well. So you can have like, GTA has the radio, you can listen, you can have a concert inside. It's bringing everything inside this universe so that gamers are spending all their time there. But as we move out of lockdown and IRL starts recompeting with the digital world, game sessions are usually quite long and quite engaged and quite intensive. And so they're going to probably suffer a little bit. It also has a problem of, it's a very hardcore fan activity, but that means the acquisition funnel is very, very short. Like you're either not a fan or you're like really, really into it. And so as we move out of this into more IRL, reaching out to do these cross-content partnerships with that content IP, which is really the thing that drives fandom the most and is standing out in our saturated attention economy. If you can start, or it becomes more useful and more productive, I guess, to really start having those contact points outside of the games world, so you can bring people back in and keep that fan level really high, even if they're not engaging as often or as much.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And and we've only spent about 10-15 minutes, and we are already very much coming up that this is just an incredibly complex topic, as simple as the word fandom kind of sounds, right? So Jessica, I want to bring it back to you for a sec and just, see, obviously there are so many ways companies can think about fandom, and, we're all talking about sort of fandom as building fandom as a positive thing, but are there, can you tell us or take us through some of the challenges and pitfalls of building fandom? Can you share perhaps any examples of how fan building efforts can actually backfire, and what are the kind of things that companies really need to be careful about here?
Sure. So sometimes, and this is getting more to a PR thing. When you're trying to build your fan base, a lot of that is just as simple as interacting with your fans and building rapport, so that you have, a flow of information. Your fans feel like they're being heard, partly because they feel they have ownership in the product that they're so enamored with. So you have to almost treat them as part owners. But sometimes you can have some of those activities clash with other business goals. So a famous example that immediately jumps to mind, that's probably one of the most well-known pitfalls, was Electronic Arts talking about the now released Star Wars Battlefront 2 game, made a comment on Reddit where they gave the line about trying to build a sense of pride and accomplishment by letting people buy loot boxes for the game, and it just fell really hollow with the community. So it was an attempt at what it should have probably been, or at least you would assume was a positive fan interaction, but it fell really flat, and it actually hit the news for how downvoted that comment became, because it is the record holder of the most downvoted comment on Reddit. So it's just kind of an example of sort of a pitfall that jumps to mind, I suppose, for things that you have to be careful about, because it's all about balancing, business needs with like real communication with your audience, and they kind of know when you're not feeding them something honest, and they can punish you for it. So
yeah, great. I mean, Hannah, did you want to add anything here as to any dangers to look out for?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that's like a super interesting example. I think last time we spoke, you mentioned it, and I kind of looked it up, and it was so you basically could pay for progress. So you could like pay for these fancy skins, or you could grind for like hours and hours and hours. And then they said it was about a sense of pride and accomplishment, but then the fans were like, well, obviously you can't tell if somebody's actually like doing the work, or if they've just like bought it for like £10. Like, why wouldn't you just like include that in the original price? And then they were like, oh, but it's about pride and accomplishment. It completely fell flat. It's exactly the same thing that happened with the Super League, where the Super League was like, oh, but we want to bring this like to the fans, and like this is for the fans. The fans all went, absolutely not. Like, you've completely missed the point of the sport. It's something that all companies need to be very careful about, particularly when we start dealing with fandom as a whole as a differentiator. Because it's so sentimental, it's not just a transactional relationship anymore. It's not just you pay, I give product. It's we want you to invest in our product emotionally, and that's why you're doing it. And so therefore we're invested in you. And if you betray that, if you like do that, in a way that is perceived as being non-genuine, or like otherwise kind of a bit off, or just being for profit, and people feel like they're being manipulated, and that's a very personal reaction. So fandom itself can backfire for you as a brand if you mistreat it. So it is a bit of a dangerous one too, if you want to go into it. It is a very powerful tool, but like, with great power comes great responsibility, etc., etc.
I think that's a great point. And I'm just being kind of mindful of time, and I see we've got some sort of questions from the audience, so which we'll get to in a second. But I just wanted to ask you, Jessica, last thing. How, if at all, at the moment, are you implementing cross-entertainment in your games? I mean, do you work with partners on cross-entertainment efforts, or do you prefer doing these kinds of things in-house? Are we supposed to expect, intergalactic gigs coming up soon or stuff like that? What does cross-entertainment look like at Eve?
So we currently are approaching this from multiple angles, and it's definitely something that is on our mind, particularly for my team with community. One of the projects that that I personally kind of was the main pusher on for this past year was a partnership program, wherein we're basically partnering with the top 20% of content creators across the whole spectrum of different channels. So we have, we're aiming for the top 20% of Twitch streamers, of music creators. I think we have a couple DJs in there, of bloggers, podcasters, all sorts of stuff. So there's all of these people in that central core of our fan base that make really good content for us. And so by partnering with them, we're trying to increase their reach, because that's basically free advertising. If other people come into their content and then they get interested in the product and they then get into the product, that's ideal. They help to maintain some of that attention economy for the existing players. So if you're not at your computer or you're at work and you're not playing Eve, you can be watching a Twitch stream, you can be listening to a podcast, discussing the politics of the recent space battles. You can be reading a blog post on different tactics that you could use in different situations. So all of that is just like that one program is a really cool way to activate a lot of this. And while tricky to measure, and I'm still working on the reporting side of this to measure impact, it kind of hits a lot of really good notes in a bunch of different areas in terms of just keeping people engaged with the content. And then we also do other stuff. We recently released our soundtrack onto Spotify, for example. So people who are driving in the car or doing whatever, if they just want some chill sci-fi music to listen to, they can actually turn on the Eve soundtrack, get a heavy dose of nostalgia as they kind of fly along the highway listening to space music. And everybody, is really happy about that sort of thing. So we'd be happy to do more.
I was hoping, I was going to say, I hope they're not flying on the highway when they're listening to this galactic. Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks. This is super, super interesting. Just kind of on a lighter parting note before we get to some of the questions. And by the way, keep the questions coming, ladies and gentlemen. We will call up a couple of those. If we don't get to all of them, we will make sure to follow up via email with answers, because we love discussing this stuff. So keep them coming. Anyway, but on a slightly lighter parting note, is there anything that you'd like to see sort of, as a gamer with regards to fandom and cross entertainment? Are there any features or cross entertainment activations that would make you personally go, wow, as gamers? Hannah, do you want to start on this one, or?
I would like to see more books. No, I do wish the acquisition funnel was broader, because I have a lot of friends who do gaming, and I've like dabbled a bit myself, and I'm like a big fan of the lore, but it can be quite hard for people like me who like have a lot of different interests, and we have MacBooks, so it never really works to like do gaming. And so I'm just there like, oh, I wish I had, a lot of money and a lot of time to spend. And if I was in there, if I like got like over the line, I'd probably be really into it. But yeah, no, and also obviously there's still like a male gamer skew, but whatever.
Well, it's not whatever. I mean, but yeah, you're quite right to bring that up, actually. And well, it seems like the gap is closing slowly in terms of gaming, and we kind of field the quarterly surveys every quarter, and every quarter that gap seems to just so hopefully we can keep going. Yeah, Jessica, any wishes to the ether?
Wishes into the ether. Sure. So I like to. I'm a big fan of the hyper-connected universe. So I want more ways to interact with like that universe that I'm in love with EVE Online, or any other game. So I can get super into various other games, but I want more ways to interact with that game even when I'm not at my computer. So if that's, being able to manipulate my planetary colonies on my phone, or being able to chat with my court mates, while I'm at work or whatever, like that sort of interconnected randomness helps to keep me constantly engaged. And even when it's on my mind outside of whatever I'm doing, you know, I get to kind of escape into it a little bit, even if it's not playing the full game. So that sort of thing is super big for me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would bet that given the fact that this big battle has been going on for over a year, there's probably an art of war on some Discord servers somewhere, like just waiting to be. People get really into this stuff. I was on a server, Discord for a while, and like just all day, every day, they're just like, "Oh, do this. It's pretty crazy." But yeah, but then it's off platform, right? Which is like the problem for gaming companies themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fantastic. I mean, thank you both. These are all really, really interesting points. I, for one, am still waiting for that Mewtwo special, stand-up comedy special on Netflix one day. Let's see if that ever happens.
Cough, Netflix, cough.
Yeah. But I think the time has come for us to just take a couple of questions with a few minutes left. And so I'm just kind of looking through our list over here, and we've got one question here from TJ at ixco.co that says, are you able to correlate high fan sentiment to high engagement and vice versa? I can probably kick this one off. I would say, TJ, partially. It very much depends, you know, again, what type of fandom are we talking about? Absolutely, a big portion of consumers, if they are fans, they will engage. But they are kind of what we would call the active vocal fans, right? But you may have fandom that's actually dormant, right? You may have fandom. I may have been a fan of an artist or a game or a TV show 5 or 6 years ago or 10 years ago. And then for whatever reason, whether it's been to do with the way that the IP has evolved or whether it's been to do with the way that my life has evolved, it stopped appealing to me. And the current proposition is not something I'm necessarily engaging with. But that does not mean that I am not necessarily a fan. I think actually, like, realizing that I think that's why I think it's a really important question, because companies typically associate and measure fandom by engagement, but it only tells you a part of the story about your fans, right? Again, somebody, right, may just, you know, even physically not be able to make it to an event. Somebody, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are not a fan. So again, I would say, yes, this is sort of it's an important part, but it's only one part of your fan base. And that's why it is so important that companies actually engage in this type of segmentation of identifying the different sort of tribes and types of fandom that do exist within their communities, to be able to address not just the engaged part, but actually all of them, and make sure that they're not sort of leaving money on the table. Let me know if, yeah, Jessica or Hannah, I'm sorry I kind of hijacked this answer a little bit, but let me know if you want to add anything on here.
It was a good one for you to answer. To this point, it's always a really tricky thing, because measuring that invisible orbiting fan that isn't interacting with your product is not something that you can measure. So it's kind of like my background is actually in physics, as a physics major. So like if you don't interact with a particle, you can't really tell it's there very easily. So almost like trying to check for neutrinos coming out of a star or something. If you want to measure them, you have to like identify a few and then extrapolate to the broader sense about like how many of these people exist. Getting too deep into that metaphor, but if you can, it's almost a bit of a guess that the company has to make in terms of, does, you know, if your core fan base is really happy, does it correlate to higher engagement? I think if you have, you know, a higher happiness in your core fan base, I think the gamble or the bet that most companies make is that you're able to capture a few more of those people who are kind of passive fans, but yeah, maybe they're not interacting with the product, but they're kind of watching it from afar. And when they see the high sentiment, you can influence more of them to come back to the product or try the product for the first time. So maintaining that is always just, you know, it's kind of a core part of my role at the company anyway, is we want to keep people happy about the game, partly because we want people to be happy about the game, just, it's something that we take pride in making, but also because it can help to attract people from the outer sphere that might not have picked it up. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting, really interesting point, and also something, that's we probably will be discussing more sort of in our future work, is that one type of fandom or that one tribe can actually have a certain gravitational pull on other types of fans, right? And sort of bring them in or even alienate them, which, may or may not be a good thing. As they say, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, right? So, but obviously that has got some sort of red lines to it as well before we get too deep into that. I think we've got probably time for maybe one more question. We've got Prasant asking, how do you build fandom for mobile-only games? Do you feel to? I mean, I'm happy to kick it off again if you'd like me to, but feel free to start.
I mean, for mobile-only games, well, it's not about the format. I think the point of fandom is that it's not necessarily about the format. So it is about like engaging something that's a lot deeper than the surface level activity. So it shouldn't really matter if it's on a phone, but if you're tapping into a normal behavior and giving it an outlet, I mean, people aren't really fans of TikTok. I can't think of a mobile game that has a huge amount of fandom. Maybe Animal Farm or what was that? Animal Crossing.
Clash of Clans actually has a pretty decent fandom.
That was the other.
They do a really good job of maintaiing it too. So.
You got Clash of Clans, you got Raid, you've got. I mean, there are a bunch of companies that I guess have fandom on mobile. But to your point, Hannah, I do think that it's more to do about really being able to figure out not just what your consumers and users like about your game, but what do they like in life? Mm-hmm. What is it that actually makes them tick? How can you help them satisfy those needs, right? So I did like actually the other day, I think, and I wish I could remember exactly how the activation went, but it was in some sort of cooking game. I think the Gordon Ramsay kind of cooking game, it was just a sort of mobile game and you sort of progress through levels. And then ultimately, obviously it's aimed at a particular demographic, but ultimately you unlock levels and you unlock premium recipes by Gordon Ramsay, right? So again, like that game is essentially like a restaurant manager or a puzzle or whatever, but the fact that they realized that people who are playing this game that's activated by Gordon Ramsay are probably into cooking, it's always able, but essentially it's really about the ability to connect the dots just outside and bring it outside of just your immediate games environment and really think about people's lives and general digital preferences.
To that point, actually, I just saw one come in about VR games, and I have to say the best VR game I've ever played was that Tetris one, the really, really cool like Tetris VR, like I forget what it was called. Oh my god! If you know the game, you know what I'm talking about. But Tetris is basically like such a basic like block game, but it's so cool because if you're like really good at organizing your room, if you play Tetris all the time, and they did like psychological studies where people who have like memory problems would still be able to remember like the Tetris theme song and like could do the blocks in their heads. So even stuff like that, even if it's we actually didn't get into this much, but there's like fandom over like content IP, and then there's fandom over format, so like mechanics, so like Tetris, Lego, like the way of doing things, which can also be like super appealing.
Yeah.
But either way, it doesn't matter if it's on like mobile, a VR headset, on a TV screen. It's all about the thing that you're doing through those mediums.
Absolutely. Well, I'm being told we are up against the hour now, so I mean, there's so much more to talk about. So everybody who is still with us and listening, please feel free to keep the conversation going with us. And I would love to thank our panelists, Jessica and Hannah. Thank you for a great discussion.
Thanks for having me.